I remember the trial very vividly, and it was about 4 years ago for this anti-TNF drug. And at the stage, I'd had about 6-7 years of ongoing pain, and I do remember the risks being explained to me, but I really felt so shattered by the pain that all I wanted was relief. And it didn't make much sense to me, and I certainly would never have factored the risks in at that stage, because the hope of something helping would have far outweighed the risks. So I really didn't take into account what might happen with a drug that wasn't particularly, there was no data on its safety at that stage. It was a trial, so I wasn't nearly as aware as I should have been. I think I did feel differently about the risks when I was feeling a lot better. The relief was so immense that suddenly life was worth living again, and you valued your life. Whereas before, life was so unbearable that if somebody had said you have a 70-30 chance of a terrible thing happening to you if you take the risk, I would have done anything. But I think when you begin to feel better, you become much more stable and you have a much more positive outlook. So if somebody then says to you, well, there is this risk of infection, or you're young, we don't quite yet know about the risks of what would happen if you were to become pregnant, you do begin to think, well, it is something I need to certainly be aware of. And I think it's all a matter of how you value your life much more when you're out of that awful pain and life is worth living. So suddenly you are beginning to think, well, I need to be responsible, and weigh up both. I think numbers actually work quite well for me in terms of the risk. So if somebody says 1, you have a 1 in 100,000 chance of this condition having this side effect. That works well for me in that it's very straightforward. I can imagine a room of 100,000 people, and if I was the one person in that room to be affected, I would be very unlucky. But I can see at the same time why it might be slightly meaningless to somebody else and a little bit dry and a bit clinical. So I can see why there might be better ways of saying this is the risk. There might be a softer, more accessible way. If I was put onto a new treatment, there would be 3 things that I would want to know. The first would be the side effects of that tablet. The second would be the safety data. Is it an established drug, or is it a relatively new drug in which we don't know the outcomes so much? And then thirdly, I'm 34 years old, so my needs are very different to what they would be if I'm 20 years older. So at the moment I'm working, I need to continue to work, and I would need to also know what the problems would be should I become pregnant. So I'd need to be aware of that kind of thing right now. If I was taken off coproximal, I would be very concerned, because it's a drug that works for me, and I would want to know very quickly that I could have a substitute that was just as effective and relieve the pain. What I don't want to happen is to be on another drug and then have to sort of boost it up with a whole cocktail of steroids again, because this is what happened before I was on my anti-TNF drug. I had to be on so many steroids, anti-inflammatories, painkillers. My head rattled with all the pills. So now that I'm much better controlled with the anti-TNF, I have reduced all the drugs that I'm taking, and I manage very well with just a very small amount. So I do not want to have a drug withdrawn at this stage when I'm doing so well.